Hi, everybody. This is Lauren Baker of Search Engine Journal, and welcome to today's SEJ webinar, brought to you by our partners at CallRail. With us today, we have Michael Scott and Amelia Northrop Simpson. How's it going, guys?
Going great. How about yourself?
Doing good, thanks. How about you, Amelia?
Doing great. Really pleased to be here.
So, you guys are based out of Montreal and North Carolina, correct?
That's
Exactly.
right.
Yep. Nice, very cool. So, I'm going to hand things off over to Michael and Amelia after a moment. Welcome to today's SEJ webinar, Google Ads, how to boost revenue and optimize for offline sales. This should be very interesting because we all want to get, not only do we all want to boost revenue and optimize for offline sales, but we all want attribution as well for what's happening offline. So this is really cool. I know there's a lot with phone tracking and things like that we're going to be going over today. So really excited to go over this. In the chat box, please feel free to pipe in. Let everyone know where you're based. Say hi, things like that. We really like to get a lot of interaction on these webinars. So while Michael's presenting, I know Amelia is going to be jumping in with some questions as well, which reminds me there's also a Q&A box here in our webinar, our SEJ webinar area. While the presentation is going on, please feel free to ask questions. We'll save some for the end, but the ones that the better question you ask is the most relevant to the slides that Michael is presenting, Amelia will pipe in and ask those questions live as you type them. We also do have a handout today. If you go click over to the handout section near chat and Q&A, it is a Google Sheet template for Google Ads and boosting your conversions. So Michael will be going over that, and you can go ahead and download it right there from the handout section. So I'm going to hand things over to the both of you to let you get started.
Awesome. Amelia, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. I'm Amelia Northrop Simpson, Senior Product Marketing Manager here at CallRail, and work primarily at CallRail with our marketing agencies, which I know we have a lot here in the webinar today. So much love to the marketing agencies out there, as well as our enterprise clients.
Awesome. My name's Mike. Michael Scott, just like the paper company guy. Pretty much, I am a marketing strategist for over 8 years now. Google has been my bread and butter since day one. Absolutely love using Google Ads. And my main focus right now is offline conversions and then also revenue growth. So helping companies grow based on revenue, not just based on conversions. That's kind of where the topic of offline conversion kind of comes through. So we're just going to jump right into this and get the ball rolling. So essentially what we're going to talk about first is what is offline conversions. And an offline conversion is essentially anything that happens offline. So a sale is the primary one. And why should you care about this is why should you care about sales is because that's what makes you guys the money. So pretty much what we want to focus on is making you guys more money. And when you can optimize based on an offline conversion in Google, you can then optimize for sales. So this is very, very important because as you guys are growing your Google ad accounts, as you guys are growing your business, you then want to move the bar and move the level up from going from optimizing to calls to form submissions to then optimizing for actual sales. So what an offline conversion actually allows us to do is import that back into the Google ad account and then optimize for the dollar amount. So we can then roll that forward and then have more sales coming through at the end of the day. And that's always the goal for almost every single business. I've never heard a business complain for me to help them make them more money and everything like that. So it can also be other offline conversions that you can optimize for. So sales is always going to be the primary one. It can be if they come into the store and redeem a coupon. But what this essentially allows us to do is when we look at e-commerce allows us to optimize based on revenue, and Google ad accounts lets us optimize on revenue. Most B2B companies and most local companies, actually, you can't really optimize for revenue because there's not like a direct sale on the site. So we have to upload offline conversion. So this is just going to allow us to actually compete like ecom and then run campaigns like ecom as well, and then optimize based on the dollar value. So really, really important. Who can use this? Essentially anyone that is wanting to bring their Google Ads account to the next level. Anyone that wants to then also optimize based on sales. It just really helps anyone running Google Ads to like just bring it to the next level. I typically don't see this on any accounts. So I audit roughly 1,000 accounts per year, and I haven't seen this one time. So this would definitely bring, your company to the next level. If you were working for an agency, it would make you definitely stand out as something unique as well. So just kind of going through the steps there. And then just also a quick agenda. So we're going to explain kind of the step-by-step process of what offline conversions are, and then so you guys can understand what's happening. But then also later down the line, we're also going to walk you through exactly one by one the entire process of how to set this up in your own Google Ad account. So you guys don't have to worry. If it seems a bit confusing at first, we're going to walk you through step by step at the end. So you guys don't need to worry about that.
Michael, one thing that I would point out that I really love that you said just now is being able, if you have those offline conversions, being able to compete as though you were all e-commerce. A lot of folks have sort of a blind spot in their MarTech stack that is those offline conversions. And if you think about it, like if you think about like all your other sales channels, like we would find this unacceptable. Right? We would find it unacceptable that you would have one method of selling that you could never track and was never visible in your MarTech stack. It is just like, this is the reason that this is getting so much attention right now. And when we think about the why of that, of this webinar, is really being able to like reveal those transactions, get them in the MarTech stack where you can use them. So important, and really happy that we're talking about it today. And the level of detail, everyone who's listening to this on the webinar, the level of detail that Michael is about to unleash on you on how to do this is fantastic. So buckle up, take some notes. The recording is going to be available soon. Michael, back to you. I'm pumped.
Thanks so much. So typically when we talk about offline conversions, we talk about who can use it. So realistically, anyone can use offline conversions, but these are the three typically that we see are the highest value for offline conversions. So B2B lead gen, when you're selling massive deals to these clients and you have a very long sales funnel, being able to optimize back to the beginning based on just sales numbers is super important. So normally we see that any B2B company that is hitting over 60 leads per month that we can then optimize towards is a really strong candidate for offline conversion optimization. And then any high close volume local business. So any local business that's getting a lot of traffic, a lot of conversions, they can do a whole bunch of business per month. This is like a pressure washer, a landscaper. They can do 3-4 different projects per day, and then they can convert on those very quickly. Plumber as well, any kind of local business. Whereas the opposite, whereas like a roofer can only do like one roof per month or even like 5 roofs per month, that's not as the best candidate for it. But you can always go kind of down the funnel, which we're going to go into a bit later, and then optimize for offline conversion as well. But pretty much what we're seeing is any really high volume is really strong for this, because you're feeding Google, and the more data Google has, the more it can optimize, and the more it can kind of just present a better front for you on the Google Ads side. And then high conversion volume as well, very similar. So if it's a very high ticket item, that's also really value for us, because we want to make sure that we're actually optimizing for what's making us money. So lawyers, very notorious in the Google Ads space, they're extremely high cost per click. So if we're spending over $100 cost per click in that location, we want to make sure that we're only bidding on or optimizing for what's making us money. So we want to make sure that we can also do that for lawyers, and then any other high ticket B2B contractors, any luxury goods like wedding dresses is a very good example as well, whereas they have to come in, get fitted, anything like that. The sale only happens in person, and that's where offline conversion really shines through, is anything where they have to come in person or pay cash in person, or they need to do XYZ step down the funnel. Offline conversion really comes through and helps us optimize for where they initiated the entire process rather than kind of like where they ended the goal. So we can really optimize from the beginning rather than optimizing from the end. And then typically for conversions, we talk about the flow of conversions. So when I talk about the flow of conversions, it's the ease of the conversion per cycle. So when I kind of go through this, I'm going to start drawing on the screen a little bit here. But as we kind of go to the next stage, it's going to get harder and harder for us. So if you're asking yourself, is offline conversions right for me? What I would ask you is, where do you kind of fall in this line? Are you able to get a lot of impressions? If you say, yes, I am, that's great. Are you able to get a lot of clicks? Yes, perfect. And then simple conversions is what we consider something easy to happen that we can track on the website. So add to cart for e-commerce is a good example of this. You can click add to cart. Normally we get a whole bunch more add to cart than actual purchases. So it's an easier conversion for us to track. View product and then time spent on site is also really easy for us to track. But then a harder conversion is for a call, a form submission, anything that just takes more time from people to do. So if we see that we are getting a lot of really good simple conversions and a lot of really good hard conversions as well, we then know that we can then optimize for the fifth step, which is offline conversions. So we need a lot of hard conversions or conversions happening on the website for us to really consider that we can do offline conversions. Because again, Google is a data pool and we just need to keep feeding it as much data as possible. So if you say, I'm getting 60, 70 calls a month, that's great. We can then consider offline conversions. If you're like, I'm only getting 10, 20 calls a month, I would say, let's try to get that a bit higher. Let's optimize for that goal first, and then we can consider offline conversions. Offline conversions, anyone can use. It's just a matter of time, a matter of budget, and then also just a matter of how your ad account is performing. So we optimize for the initial goal of getting you more calls, more lead form submissions, and then we then move into the offline conversion part. You can still run offline conversion, but we normally just recommend having a bit more traffic through. So how do we get started? What do we need to run offline conversions? We're going to need a Google Ad account. This is a Google Ad walkthrough, so we're going to have a Google Ad account. We need a way to track the gclid, which we're going to go into a bit later of explaining what a gclid is. And then we're going to need a CRM. And then we're also going to need a way to upload that data back to Google. The easiest way we use that is going to be Zapier. Zapier is the default for Google as well. So if you guys already have a Zapier account, you already have a CRM, you are already tracking gclids, and you already have a Google Ad account, you could technically launch this today. So what is a gclid? A gclid is essentially a tracking ID that Google applies to every single click that happens on every single ad. So it's just a way to kind of link it back to the beginning and link it to where it originated from. So if I'm searching for a plumber in Montreal, that's where I'm from, and I click on that ad, that gclid's going to know that I clicked on that ad from Montreal, I clicked on that ad from the keyword, I clicked on that ad. It gives it all the data from where I clicked on it from. And then we can then use that to then later for the offline conversion, track back to what originated from the sale. So essentially, just very simplified, it's just a tracking code that Google has on every single click that majority of you are either probably already tracking right now, if you guys are already using systems like CallRail or you're using systems like forms submissions or anything like that. A lot of systems already have this in place, and then you just need to re-upload it back into the Google Ad account, which again, we're going to go into later, so don't worry about that. So how do we track gclid? So the first way we track gclid is going to be via form. So form submission is one of the ways we can track gclid. And it's essentially, we just add a hidden field in the back end. Once they fill in the form, the gclid's already in the URL at the top. Once they click submit, it's just going to push that to our CRM. And then we already have the data. It's already good to go. Like I said before, majority of you might already have this in place, which is great, but we're going to kind of go through the entire process and see where we can kind of utilize this later down the line. But we just name the field, the hidden field gclid. On majority of form systems, that's all you really need to do. I took a screenshot. This is from Unbounce. So field label and ID gclid. Once they fill in the form, I'm going to pull all their data, any UTM source I have, and then also their gclid data as well. And then it's going to pull right into my CRM. Another way is phone tracking. So like I said before, CallRail is one of the ways we can utilize gclid tracking through phone calls. So if they click on the website and then they call, we can actually track gclid through CallRail. And then we can use the exact same thing where we push that into our CRM and then utilize that in the exact same way as form submissions. So it allows you to track name, phone number, Gclid, and then there's a whole bunch of other data like UTM source and then UTM medium, UTM campaigns that we can pull through CallRail. We normally use CallRail as a default. There are other tools as well, but we normally use, again, CallRail as our default just because it pulls Gclid every single time, and we're very happy with that. And then CRM management as well. So once we have the Gclid pulling, we need a place to manage it. And I'll let Amelia kind of talk more about like CRM management and different tech stacks and other things that you guys can utilize as well of what we would recommend for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love having this step in the process, Michael, because it is really the place where we can marry that online and offline data together at that sort of customer or account level and start to see like, what is the visitor profile? How are all of the activities coming together in one place? And I know like a lot of you are even putting things like scoring models into your CRM in order to figure out like, hey, like how close is this person to buying? Or like, you know, is a previous purchase indicating readiness to buy some more? But I really like the point when we talked about this before, we were talking about like, not only did they buy, but how much did they buy? So for example, we have some healthcare customers who know that like a certain procedure or a certain set of like events is going to be more profitable for than another. And so they can really like balance based on that value, how they are optimizing their ad spend, their campaigns, and their channels to really figure out like, hey, like if I know that knee replacement rehab is worth more to me than shoulder replacement, like where are the customers? What do they look like? How can I get more of them in like my most profitable verticals? So I love examples like that because it helps you every day deliver more of the customers that you want to either your business or your clients' businesses.
Yeah, exactly. We use that a lot as well. We have a lot of customers that have like a low end and a high end as well. So it's like they have $300 as their starting price, but then they have a $4,000 price. And what the CRM allows us to do is then optimize for the actual dollar value. And if we're tracking all this anyways, we can then port all this data that our sales team is very thankfully that they're putting all this data in so we can then utilize it as the marketing team to then optimize for. So if we see deals are being closed, even if they are at a smaller rate or a smaller amount, we can then see if that actually is costing us way less to get versus the higher amount might be 10 times more expensive to get, but only 5 times more expensive in terms of cost. So CRM management is one of the most important things within this, and we can't actually do offline conversion without it. It's kind of the concrete and the foundation of the entire system. We need this to work, and we need the sales team to also be putting in the dollar values of what these people are selling for.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're getting data in from Google Ads, we're sending data out from Google Ads, but the CRM is the thing that sort of grounds us here and makes sure that all the data in for our customers is in one place. And then from there, we're able to say, hey, I know this about my customers, and then I'm going to go do something about what I'm doing to better serve them.
Yeah, and we typically like recommend HubSpot or other CRMs like HubSpot. There's a whole bunch because HubSpot just works really well with CallRail, works really well with Google Ads as well, and already has majority of Gclid tracking. Their forms already work through it as well. So anything kind of like that allows you to track all that stuff, we definitely would recommend that over something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that HubSpot is probably one of our most popular CRM options. We also do have folks that use Salesforce. We have folks that use sort of their industry specific CRMs. But regardless, as Michael said, that's not a step to skip. So whatever you're using, think about how you can integrate this on or offline conversion data into your MarTech stack, whatever that MarTech stack looks like. Integrations are your friends.
Always, yep. And then we talk about upload. So in the handout section, we have a upload of Google's recommended sheet. So essentially, once we have this data, we need to port the data into the sheet to then upload to the Google Ad account. So in the handout, it's all going to be there. I would just, again, be very cautious about the timestamp. That one needs to be formatted correctly. So just be very careful of how you format that. Typically, if you are using a CRM that doesn't format it to the way Google likes it, which is it'll show you in the sheet, it's their default sheet. What you can do is you can use Zapier to just format the timestamp for you. That's why we typically use Zapier and always we use Sheets, just because there's always going to be a little bit of an issue. And with the sheet, we normally don't see any issue. And Zapier can always format the stuff to the way we want it. So pretty much right now, our system that we have is when the lead comes in, either via call, via form, they get imported into the CRM. Once the CRM gets activated and then they get sold, then we close the lead and then they get uploaded to this sheet. So we want the system to be as automated as possible so that you don't have to be manually doing any of this stuff. And majority of the stuff can be triggered via Zapier, triggered via your CRM, triggered via whatever other kind of automation tool that you guys currently have. So like I said at the beginning, we're going to be doing an example run. So we're going to be going through, this is actually one of the clients that we closed a couple weeks ago, and we're going to be doing offline conversion optimization for them because they have a really strong budget. They seem to be getting a whole bunch of conversions, but our clients always tell us, we don't really care about conversions. We don't really care about clicks. We only care about sales. So let's optimize for the sales side. So right now, what they're doing is they are an artificial turf company. They are doing sales. They are doing, the way they identify an offline conversion is by a sale. So the job is completed. They got the money. They got the close. Everything's good to go. It's imported into the CRM. We're notified. And then that is how we're identifying the offline conversion. So that's not happening online. That's not happening through a payment portal. They're either paying in cash, paying check, paying via invoice. So we're never really going to know until the salesperson or the person out in the field is going to mark this as a closed deal. And then as soon as that happens, we're going to then import this data back into Google. So how are we going to track these? Like we mentioned before, calls and forms are our best friend. We're going to use that as much as possible. The CRM they're currently using is HubSpot, which we're going to walk through as well. And then how are we going to trigger this conversion? Once the lead value is added, so the CRM, they add the value to the lead and then they mark the job as complete. That's how we trigger this entire system. And then we're going to be uploading via Google Sheets and Zapier as well. So again, walking through step by step. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them as we go through. So when we first start, we want to have an upload plan. We want to know what kind of tech we have available to us so that we can then utilize. So as mentioned, HubSpot has a direct integration with Google Ads, so you can use that. So I'd suggest everyone, if they're looking into doing this, to go into their Google Ad account and look at the upload, which we'll talk about a bit later, and then see what is available to you, what you guys actually want to utilize, because you can utilize whatever you want. I prefer using Google Sheets because that's what I've been using since day one, since this launched, I think 4 years ago. But anything that you guys want to use, they've added a whole bunch more since I started, but I started with Google Sheets. I'm used to Google Sheets. I know I can get this running on Google Sheets very quickly. So I have a process for Google Sheets that I always use. Whereas if you guys want to try HubSpot, you want to try MailChimp, you want to try Salesforce, whatever it is, feel free to explore that avenue as well. Majority of the systems are going to be exactly the same. It's just going to be the upload that's going to be a little bit different for you guys. So just look into the uploads and see what is available to you. And if there's anything custom that you guys want to have for yourself, if you guys are very against using, like, let's say, Google Sheets, or you're very against using XYZ, you're more than welcome to check out what you guys have available to you. So the sheet in the handout is going to be the starting point of everything. So we need to fill in this sheet to then make this upload into Google. So having everything populate into the sheet is our next plan. So once we know what tech we can then use, if you're going to be using directly to HubSpot, you don't need to follow this step. But if we are using Google Sheet, which I would say 95% of people are going to be using, we then need to go, okay, how are we going to populate this sheet? And then we need to follow the steps kind of moving forward. So where Google Click ID is coming through. Sorry, go ahead, Amelia.
Oh yeah, you were actually just getting into what I was going to ask you because Jesse in the questions is asking how is Gclid pulled through? I know that you showed earlier how it's pulled through in a form, but also wanted to go through, if you don't mind, real quick, how it's getting pulled through via phone numbers. So do you mind if I dive into that for like 2 minutes?
Not a problem. So Gclid can be pulled a couple different ways. It really depends on the CRM that you're using. But when we trigger our action, so when we trigger the sale, we use Zapier to then trigger and push this and fill out every single thing within the upload plan. So if we have a field called Gclid on our HubSpot account, if we had conversion name, conversion time, conversion value on our HubSpot, as soon as our goal is hit, we're going to automatically upload that via Zapier. So we're going to push that field by field from Zapier to the Google Sheet.
And specifically when the Gclid, like how we're able to like identify it and like tie it to a call or an event. So Jesse's asking about like what setting needs to be in place for each number. So my answer to that, Jesse, let me just read your question for a second. What is needed to be in place for each number so that Gclid is pulled through for those calls? And more specifically, would it be a pool or an individual number? So he's touching on something really important here. And there's actually like a couple different ways that people are tracking these offline conversions. Some of them are doing like a source level tracking where you're basically like, hey, I'm going to put one number on my billboard. Hey, I'm going to put another number on my Google business profile, see what the difference is. But then there's also something called visitor level tracking. And that's where you're taking a pool of numbers, minimum 4, and sort of cycling them through your website. And when someone calls, we're able to connect that call with that visit. And that's how we're getting the Gclid. I hope that makes sense to you, Jesse. Michael, any color commentary you would add to like, okay, how are we getting this Gclid in the first place to put on this sheet?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go through that in a couple steps moving forward, but great question because it's going to be through the hidden fields. It's going to be through the website pools through CallRail. So there's a bunch of different ways you can utilize it, but it's essentially capturing it on the forms, capturing it on the phone number. And like Amelia said, you're going to need a website pool, or sorry, a phone pool, so that it can differentiate from what's coming through.
All right. So I got a little 100%. Ahead of you there, Michael.
No worries. No worries. So here we go. Tracking Gclid number 2. You guys jumping the gun. That's no problem. So again, like we mentioned before, there's 2 ways to test Gclid. What we want to do is if we are using form, we can very easily add that hidden field on the back end. We use Unbounce. We use, there's a whole bunch of different forms that allow hidden fields that you guys can just see if it allows, just log into the system and then just go in and see if they allow hidden fields. If they don't, you can always look for another free alternative. I think Gravity Forms is a free version that you can use on your WordPress accounts. We use Unbounce religiously. We love Unbounce, but that allows hidden fields as well. And when we add the hidden field, it'll then push. And the easiest way to test is this is going to pull into your CRM is just by adding a Gclid equals test 1, 2, 3 or whatever you want it to call. You can just like slap your keyboard a whole bunch of times and see what like random numbers. It doesn't really matter. But essentially, as long as there's a question mark after the URL, you can add a Gclid equals test or Gclid equals whatever. And if you fill in the form and it pulls that Gclid into your CRM, you know it's working perfectly. So as soon as you can pull that through, it works great. The great thing about CallRail is it automatically pulls it for you. You don't need to have like test the system. It already works great. So we want to make sure we're tracking Gclid. Again, for this company, we're using it 2 different ways, form and call. So for the form, we just go into the back end, add that hidden field. It'll pull automatically. And then for the call tracking, what we can then do is when we set up the CallRail count, we're going to set up a number pool of 4. And if we see that we're getting too much traffic initially, we're going to up that 4 to a 6 and then up that 6 to an 8 if we get too much traffic on that pool. And the reason being is that pool needs to have it needs to rotate correctly. So if you have over 6 people on your website, you can't have a number pool of 4 because it's going to incorrectly fire. So you want to have more pool on the site. So we always kind of just start with the 4. If we get too much, if we go into our Google Analytics and we see that we're getting on average 50 people on our website, we need to definitely increase that. But we always want to look at what's coming in through Google Ads because that's the primary way we're going to be tracking this. So if we're getting roughly 4 people per visit on Google Ads, we know that 4 is going to be enough. Whereas if we're getting more than that, we want to keep increasing that pool until we get a good size pool that we can then rotate correctly. Amelia, I don't know if there's a cap on the pool on CallRail or if there's like a certain limit, but I know we've been up there quite a bit a few times.
Yeah, I mean, we have some quite large customers. I have some like numbers in mind in the back of my head, but like, it is a quite large number. And I'd say like, if you are an enterprise customer, talk with one of our sales folks because like they will have a good idea of like where the maximums really lie. But I mean, we have some pretty big customers who are pulling like in the thousands of numbers. So it's really dependent on like your max traffic, what you're comfortable with in terms of like attribution accuracy versus like how many numbers do I really want rotating in and out. So you've got a lot of flexibility and you've got a quite comfortable ceiling. It's a very high ceiling.
And then after we get that pool on the website, we then want to import that into our CRM. So CallRail does work with a bunch of different CRMs natively, but if it doesn't work with your CRM, you can just use Zapier to pull everything in. There's Pabbly as well. There's a bunch of different automation tools that work quite easily, but you need to pull that into your CRM. So once the call happens, we normally pull it after the call's done, so we have better tracking. We have the call recording. We have everything into the CRM. And this is kind of a Zapier guideline that we normally follow. So this is all from CallRail. So newest call recording link, the Google Click ID right there. Mark as lead. This is depending on the CRM. You want to mark it as a lead true. Source equals Google Ads. Always good for us to know that. If you want to add any tags to your leads coming through as well, we normally do just so we can sort very easily. And then phone number and customer name as well. So we're just pulling as much data as we can through CallRail. And then it gets imported into our CRM fairly quickly. And then we can then move down the steps. As you can see, though, the main thing is that we're pulling the gclid in. So once we pull the gclid in, we can then move forward with the steps. So I would put CallRail on your site for Google Ads. And then if we are seeing CallRail is triggering, then we can then look into offline conversions. So I would then get like you can also, offline conversions also works backwards. So if you do pull from, let's say 2 weeks ago, you can still pull that data in and optimize for that via your account as well. You just need to have that manual input into the sheet. But that's essentially like, you can just test it out and see what's kind of collecting. And if you are collecting enough numbers, you're like, I'm really happy with this number of pool, this pool of contacts that we're getting through gclid. Like we're getting 100, we're getting 200. Great. You can then import that directly into Google Ads and then start the automation process as well. So for the CRM, we normally have, this is different for every single client. So it's going to be probably different for you as well. But the main thing is going to be, what's the trigger to cause this lead to then upload to the Google Sheet? So what we normally do is lead value is there. So I'm just kind of jumping right at the bottom. So lead value exists. So the salesperson put a number in the lead value. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wait 10 minutes just in case they put it incorrectly. And then they mark the deal as closed. So if they don't mark the deal as closed, we then instantly go back to the beginning and then wait 10 minutes. And then if we go back to the beginning, it's not there still, we then stop the lead. And then we can send a notification to the rep saying, hey, what's going on? This is all automation that you guys can then work your specific way, however your business wants to run. But this is normally how we set it up, where it's just lead value exists, the deal is marked as closed, and then we want the gclid to be there. We don't want to be uploading non-gclid data to the pool. We could be getting leads from Facebook. We could be getting leads from TikTok, wherever else in the world, organically, whatever else it is. So we don't really want to be uploading all those to the Google Sheet. We can, but it's not going to upload to Google, so we don't need to. So if you guys are paying per zap, this will save you a couple bucks by not uploading every single lead to the pool. We just want to upload the ones that have a gclid that exist.
Quick interjection, Michael, because we did get one question in the chat about Gclid. So Mason is saying Gclid only populates on the first page after an ad click, and asks how we're storing it. So I think that I have the answer to that one, which is that we do store it in a cookie, and that cookie can exist for up to a year, but you can also set it to expire a little bit sooner, kind of depending on preference.
Yeah, that's typically for a form submission. So if they are jumping page to page, 100% they're going to lose that Gclid unless it's stored via cookie. I don't think CallRail actually loses it because it's the initial, as soon as they come in, even if they go around, that's what the website pool is there for. So even if they jump into 7 different pages, that the phone number is still going to be associated to that Gclid. So
Correct.
CallRail is good for that. Whereas for the form submissions, 100% right. If they jump around changing pages, the Gclid will vanish unless you keep that cookie tracked with Google Tag Manager. Or what we typically do is just have a single page landing page, whereas we're only running Google Ads to one page. They have nowhere else to go. And if they fill out the form, they fill out the form, or they call us. We have only 2 options. We essentially force their hand. So we want to keep them on one singular page. You can do it through Google Tag Manager where you keep it as a cookie, but it's a lot more complicated in that sense. We normally just keep it on a one-page landing page. Again, we use Unbounce a lot, and that's kind of the way we test it out. We can do A/B testing. If you are trying to send to your website, I would say try to track it page by page if you can. Does that answer? That's good?
Yeah.
Perfect. And then again, so like after we kind of push through and after we get the CRM data, we want to be having this value of closed. So this value then pushes back into Google as well, so that we can see what our customers are currently getting and how much they're actually making, so that we can then optimize for that. So if it ports into the Google Sheet, we can then optimize for that value. And it doesn't matter the size of the value, as long as we port the value in, then we can optimize. If we get 100 $100 deals, it's better than one $1,000 deal. So we always want to just make it make sense and let Google kind of optimize the dollar value at the end of the day. So we're going to create the Google ad conversion now, and this is where we can kind of go back to step 1 to see if it's applicable to you. So you click on tools and settings. It's the little wrench at the top. Once you click on that, you click on conversions, you do new conversion action, you click on import, and then other data sources or CRMs, and then you click track conversions from clicks. So this is step-by-step exactly what you guys need to click on. I copy pasted the verbiage exactly from Google Ads so you guys can follow it pretty exactly. And then it's going to look like this. So after you click on that, it's going to say, what kind of lead category do you want to do? We're going to click on converted leads because they already converted for us. And then what kind of value we're going to use? We're going to use a different value. We normally put $1 as the default, just in case there's no lead value behind it. But via step 3, we said that it's not going to import to the list unless there's a lead value. So that's why this is important. Lead value is the most important thing here, guys, because we want to make sure that we're actually optimizing for the sales amount, not just the sales, like the number of sales that happen. So it's great we can optimize for the number of sales that happen, but the dollar amount matters more to us because, again, I'd rather optimize for if we get 10 leads for $100 or 1 lead for $1,000, or it could even be 1 lead for $10,000. We want to make sure that we have the maximum dollar amount so Google can then optimize for that as well. And then for the count, we just count every single lead that comes through so that we can then optimize it as well. Since we're uploading via Sheet, there should be no reason, even if a customer, let's say for lawn care, comes back 6 times and they click on an ad every single time, we want to count them every single possible time so that we can still optimize for our Google Ads. So then after that, what we do is we click on import from platform data, and then this brings us back to the step 1. So this will show you where you can upload and where via you can upload. So like this is the Google Sheet. This is where you choose the Google Sheet. If you already clicked on the handout, you'll already have the Google Sheet associated to your Google or your Gmail account. So you can just use that as your default, and then you just pick the fields. And you also need a Zapier account. I think Google is allowing it only through Zapier for the most part. So I would suggest always having a Zapier account before starting this as well. You just need to log into your Google Sheet account, and then you're pretty much ready to go. And then this is the settings. It's a bit zoomed out, so you guys are going to be sent the deck so you guys can kind of zoom in here. But this is all the settings that I currently have for the Google Sheet upload. The main one is always going to be the Google Click ID, but then also the conversion action. It doesn't have to be different. It can be exactly the same. So you can definitely use just one flat number if you know, or one flat naming if you want. But if you want to have different names, or if you are optimizing for different actions, which you definitely can do, like let's say you want to optimize for two completely different offline actions, you can definitely do that as well. You can have that in the sheet differently as well. But for me, I only want to optimize for sales right now, so I'm just going to have offline closed leads, and that's it. And then my timestamp is there, my value is pulling, and then I just put the flat code for the currency, USD, CAD. If you guys are in Europe, you guys can change it based on where you guys are as well. But just this exactly typically always works. Again, the main thing is making sure that your timestamp is correct. It'll say it in the handout what you guys need, but it needs to be essentially year, month, date, and then the actual time where it came from, because Google uses this to see if it's a lead that didn't come through yet or a lead that came in like a minute ago. How did they do an offline conversion? Doesn't make sense. So it needs to be like a 24-hour wait period. So if you guys do run a test, just wait a couple days or wait a day if it doesn't work, because the timestamp might be a little off and Google might not accept it. So I've seen many times, and I banged my head against my desk many times, and then all I had to do was wait one extra day, and then it worked perfectly fine. And then
hard-won wisdom there.
Oh yeah, it's trial and error. I was like, why is this not working? And then it was like, oh, I did a test, and the test was from a minute ago. It's not going to count that as a lead. And then what you guys can then do is go into your campaigns and then change your campaign goals to offline conversions. So you can see here that now we have converted leads as one of the options for us. So you can choose that as your goal. You can either run your campaigns only on the converted leads. That's if you're getting a lot, or you can run multiple. So you can run the calls, the forms, and the converted leads, so that I can optimize for all three. And that, guys, wraps everything up. We're going to jump into Q&A. Amelia, Lauren, I'll let you guys take care of or hand it off to you guys so you guys can ask away questions.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Amelia. That was as entertaining as it was informative, especially about Gclids and tracking. So thanks for running through all of that. Really enjoyed it and learned a lot as well. One question we had come up was, is this only available for Google Ads?
Yeah, so since it's Gclid, it's only available for Google Click ID. There is something called an FB Clid, so that's a Facebook Click ID, but it's a little different. That's a completely different topic as well for offline Facebook ads as well. So for right now, this is only for Google Ads, but I'm assuming that eventually it's going to be available for kind of everything as a whole.
Yeah, and we do have some integrations for Facebook and a few other ad platforms too in the CallRail platform. But like, I know that Michael, you're kind of talking like sort of service agnostic here, and so like we're focusing on Gclid today because that is sort of like the most I don't know, like built out, and you know, it could serve everyone in this audience here today, but you can absolutely optimize for offline sales for other platforms, but not in the exact same way or like use the exact same template that Michael showed us today.
Yeah, I would say as well that a lot more people have issues optimizing Google accounts rather than optimizing Facebook accounts. I feel like I've met a lot of agencies that have a good grasp on the Facebook side, whereas on the Google side, they're somewhat lost. So I think Google is one of the most important things to then talk about. Whereas Facebook, I think a lot of people have a really good grasp on Facebook already. They already have the offline. I think it's just an upload via Sheet. So I think they already have majority of that, and you can do email targeting and everything like that. Whereas for Google, you can't really do email targeting based on search terms because it's not going to know what's happening. So since we're search term based on Google, Facebook is just your targeting, who you want to target. You can upload your targets, whereas on Google, you can't really upload your targets for the search targeting. You still can, but it's a lot harder to do. And it's also just like, if someone's searching for that keyword, they're still relevant. We just want to make sure that keyword is porting back in to see the value is actually there.
Excellent. And speaking of Google and tracking, one question that did come in is, well, why would someone not use Google itself just to track the calls? Google business profiles or whatnot, as opposed to using CallRail? And would you mind refreshing the audience on the benefits of utilizing CallRail and Gclid for tracking?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that like a lot of us Google heads who know the platform really well know that within Google Analytics, like there is call tracking within Google Analytics. But I'd say like what I have found is like if you need just like very bare bones, like, hey, like here's how many calls I got, and like not really a lot of other information about campaign or source or the search term used or that visitor level tracking that I was talking about, like being able to attach it to a visitor in your CRM system. If you're okay with like just sort of the bare bones, like, hey, like did my ad campaign work? Like you can go ahead and use that. But if you're ready to sort of go past that sort of foundational stage, which I feel like if you're on an SEJ webinar, you are probably starting to look beyond that beginner level. Utilizing a call tracking platform is super powerful. I know, Michael, you're talking with a lot of folks every day who are just sort of like, hey, like I'm trying to stay ahead of trends. I'm trying to figure out like really how to make my marketing the very best that it can be and optimize everything that I possibly can in order to get the best results for my company or the best results for my client's company. And like this is absolutely one of those things that's sort of overlooked. Like I said in the beginning of the webinar, like we aren't usually optimizing for offline sales. It's not part of our traditional MarTech stack. It can be sort of an afterthought. And even some of these call-centric businesses get kind of like put in this space of like, oh, like they get all of their conversions from phone calls, so we can't really do anything with that. And like, I'm here to say, like, yes, you can. Like, you can track that. You can optimize it. I have seen customers do it, and it's super powerful to their bottom line.
Very cool. Very cool. Had a very timely question come in. Does this roll easily into GA4?
Does it roll into GA4?
Yes.
The offline conversions or the call tracking? Because like essentially, if it rolls into GA4, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it was Jesse asked again. Can we also run this or connect this process into GA4? Sorry.
You can. So you can track a majority of the process in GA4 and then push that as a conversion through Google Ads. But majority of the stuff needs the Gclid. That's the process that happens. So if you're going to be uploading the list, that can happen. The conversion that needs to happen, I would say majority of it actually cannot be pushed into GA4. Just kind of talking it through.
Yeah, it's a good question. We do have a GA4 integration that I know like a ton of our customers are using. I'm trying to think about like this exact process and like how it would relate back.
Yeah, so just like for the analytics, I think we can track the steps and we can upload the offline conversions to GA4, but the process itself is a Google ad click ID. So we're going to need Google Ads as the primary. So Google Analytics would more be like a secondary where we can then import data back into that just to have the analytics. But I don't think that we can do anything within the process and replace anything with Google Analytics, if that's the question.
Okay, great.
So I'd say it's compatible with GA4, but what you're talking about is primarily Google Ads based. And so it sort of like lives in Google Ads. Is that an accurate characterization, Michael?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, great. That makes complete sense. The next question that comes in is interesting, and maybe you can go into detail a little bit more about these announcements. Sorry. Do you foresee this workflow changing with Google's announcement of, is it GBraid, GBRAID, GBraid and WBraid parameters?
Yeah, so I think that's the web app to app. So I think it's not going to change. I think Gclid's always going to exist. I don't think they're going to phase out Gclid, or if they do phase out Gclid, it's just going to replace it with something else. So I think that this optimization kind of workshop right now is going to be able to be utilized for something else down the line, or at least duplicated with majority of the stuff implemented down the line as well. So if we want to use it for something else, once it allows us to use it, we can then optimize for GBraid or anything else. We just need to upload the data back in. So that's kind of this workshop is just explaining that we need to upload the data back in. So if we can do that with GBraid, we then can optimize for GBraid. We can then optimize for everything else as well. We just need to have that upload point, and Google needs to allow us to upload that. And before, I think it was only 4 years ago that they allowed offline conversion optimization. Before that, we had Gclid still tracking, but we had nothing to do with it. So we're getting more and more from Google every single year. So maybe 1 year they will allow it. And if you guys know how to do this, it should be fairly easy for you guys to then launch that as well.
Great. Next question, that's GA4 related. Is there any benefit in adding the Gclid as a custom definition to GA4? And what benefit if we aren't doing offline conversions but are pushing GA4 to Google Ads?
A custom parameter in GA4, I don't think it really has a use case, because we need to track it per client, not per as a whole. So Google Analytics is really good at kind of capturing total average data and total averages, how many people came from Google, how many people came from Facebook, whereas it's not good at the individual level. Like if Amelia clicked on this site, what did she convert at? If I clicked on the site, if Lauren clicked on the site, what did he convert at? So I don't think it necessarily has a use case for it, just because we need the individual tracking via CRM, not via Google Analytics. I think if you do that, it's gonna every single Gclid's different as well. So you're gonna have a bunch of mumbo kind of mixed around data. So I would say avoid that. It probably wouldn't add anything to the mix.
Yeah, it's a great creative question. I'm probably going to be thinking about that one as I go to sleep tonight and see if I can think of a use case. But I think your point around like aggregate versus granular data, it's like, I don't know that there's much benefit that I can think of off the top of my head, but you've definitely got me thinking, Catherine.
And thank you again for that question, Catherine. Follow-up question, or next question that came in is fairly specific, but do you have any advice on starting out automating uploads via SFTP server upload, pushing through offline conversions daily, weekly in the Google Ads engine?
Do you want to repeat that question? It was a very strong question. I was want to make sure I address it correctly.
Do you have any advice on starting out automating uploads via SFTP server upload, pushing through offline conversions daily and weekly into Google Ads?
So if you're uploading through SFTP servers, it's going to be a little trickier than doing through Zapier or anything else like that. When you're talking about offline, like or your own private servers, it's going to be a little bit trickier. I would say for that, as long as the schedule happens, what we normally do, or what we have done for some accounts within the past, is it's at the end of the day. So most of the clients end day at 5 p.m. We upload at 9 or 10 as a daily recurrence. So if you guys can do that within the Google Ad platform, I'd say definitely do it at a daily recurrence. But besides that, I would say you're talking about a very, very specific thing that I haven't actually came across yet. So great question. I just don't really know exactly the answer that you're looking for there.
Yeah, Michael, just contextually for the rest of us, if you know it, is the use case for that, is that around like size of upload? Is it around like security around the upload? Like for SFTP specifically, is what would be the reason that someone would do that rather than Zapier, or do you know?
I would think that it would be more just a more technical person that wants to do it through their own servers. And then also if they can't export via something, whereas if they have like an offline CRM, or if they have an in-house CRM that they're utilizing that they want to then export via that, like through refs or through I'm blanking out on the word, trigger links or anything like that, where we can then push the data out. But I would say that it would be very specific use case. I've ran this over 100 times. I haven't seen that come through yet.
No, great context. Thank you.
Yeah. If you figure out, let me know. I'm very interested.
Perfect. Another question that comes in is, what are some reasons why you should use CallRail instead of regular or normal conversion tracking through GA or whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got into that a little bit before, but again, it's kind of like with regular Google Analytics call tracking, you're basically going to get like quantity and like nothing else, whereas CallRail is going to give you more high quality data on the source, the search terms, things that are converting and making a difference to your business. And it's also going to help you, again, when you're using those website pools to track, when you're using number pools, you're able to connect it to those individual visitors rather than at that granular level. At that aggregate level. So again, as we were talking before about like sort of that granular level versus that aggregate level, the number pool tracking is really going to help you get granular on like, okay, like what are my customers actually doing? Oh, okay, this one went to these pages on my website and then they converted, and like helps give you that full picture of the customer journey and connects the offline and the online conversions and activities in one place in your CRM. Does that make sense? Yeah, I would say too, like
Yes.
what we're seeing that is super powerful right now too, is that because we are routing all these phone calls via CallRail, and you're able to like actually do your phone trees through CallRail as well, we're also able to take your data and be able to serve you back summaries of your calls, look for keywords and key terms that are popping up in your phone calls again and again. So we have an AI-based service called Conversation Intelligence that a lot of marketers are really into right now because a lot of this sort of like conversation intelligence based AI space is sort of dominated by call centers right now. And so there's nothing really for the marketers of the world who are really wanting to like maybe listen to some customer phone calls or really figure out like, hey, what are my customers saying? I know that we have had a lot of people in the legal space, particularly Michael mentioned legal is a place where you're spending so much on your key terms. Like those keywords just go for sometimes hundreds of dollars, like a personal injury lawyer. It's like, it's just insanely competitive. And so being able to really drill down and say like, hey, what are my customers saying out loud? Because I know that what they're saying out loud is very similar to what they are typing into a search bar. And then I can be ahead of my competition. I can be putting those search terms I can be just ahead of the game on like what those search terms are and beat out my competition for what the next big search word or keyword is going to be.
Amazing. Yeah, and that really fast tracks. With basic SEO, we always tell clients, don't just look at the keyword data. Look what your people are calling in, and which terms and questions they're asking your customer service team, and that's
totally.
It. Right? The ability to fast track and do that without having to get customer service people in a survey or whatever to ask them, and have that pure data is gold.
Totally. And it's such evergreen advice that I feel like I heard a lot of times as a marketer when I was in the field, but I was like, I don't know how to action that. Like, where do I even listen to these customer calls? Or like, I don't have time to set up a survey or a focus group, and like being able to get transcripts of your calls, summaries of your calls, and spot keywords in your calls. It's like having a 24/7 focus group.
100%. I love that. We have a couple minutes left, and I'd like to close things out with an incredibly specific question from Mason. Thank you, Mason, for your activity today in the webinar. Mason says that the Zapier integration has new records being added as new rows. Have you had any issues with that base upload file getting too large because of this? And do you clean rows out periodically?
So normally I check it once per month just to see if there's any misfires, but it really depends on the volume of sales that you're getting. If you're getting like 6,000 sales per month, do a check every single week. If you're only getting 100 sales per month, which still works for optimization, you only need to check it once a month. And like that's just to see if it's firing correctly, if all the fields are pulling. But I've never had an issue. It's Google Sheets. I've had Google Sheets with over 300,000 rows in it, so I've never really seen any issues with that.
Great. Well, it's good to hear, especially that many rows. So thanks again, Amelia and Mike, for today's webinar. Again, incredibly full of information, very usable. Thank you again for the template. Just the ability to download and get started is amazing. And thank you again to the team at CallRail for always partnering with SEJ on these great webinars. Definitely some of our favorites. So thanks again. Really appreciated that run through. Our next SEJ webinar is going to be on Boost Your SEO, how to identify and eliminate keyword cannibalization with John Ershaw and Sophie Mule of Data Metrics. Again, Mike and Amelia, anything you'd like to say before you sign off?
Well, I honestly just want to thank Michael again for that incredible run through, just like incredible display of technical expertise, and just really grateful to be presenting alongside you. And thank you, Lauren, for having us on. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just thanks for having us. Always a pleasure. Great to be here, guys.
Awesome. And just as a reminder, for all attendees and registrants, we will be sending out a video recording of today's webinar, along with the slides and the template handout. So all of that's going to be made available. So thanks again, Mike and Amelia, and see you all on June 28th for our Boost Your SEO webinar. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.